Hello, everyone. After 1 week break, your favorite podcast, After Coach, is back with a very intriguing guest whom every avid ESS student will definitely recognize. On this week's episode, we'll host Ryan Murphy, our resident ESS and STP teacher at Atlantic College, who is here in his first year. From what I heard so far, he's one of the most interesting guests we had on the pod, possessing numerous extraordinary stories from his life, which he will hopefully share with us. He will also reveal where his passion for ESS stems from. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as we did. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the After Codes podcast.
Subscribe now!
Hi everyone and welcome back to the 6th episode of After Codes podcast. Very happy to be here, join with Carlo and Michael as always.
Hello.
Hello.
And today we have another very special guest, Ryan Murphy.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming, Ryan. Ryan is a new teacher here at Atlantic College. He's my ESS teacher.
Shout out to ESS.
Indeed. Very cool guy. And again, thank you for taking time out of your day to come join us. Okay, first question, just to break the ice a little bit. We wanted to ask you, Ryan, do you think that our dreams have meaning? Do you think they predict our future or reveal hidden parts of our mind?
Oh, that's a great question. I used to think about this a lot. There's a really great visualization of the ninth dimension. And so working our way up to the ninth dimension, the third dimension is what we live in. The fourth dimension is time. The fifth dimension is like all possible times that we can imagine at that. And I think we dream in the fifth dimension.
Okay.
So do you think, like, if I, for example, dream something, I don't know, about, like, I don't know, me getting a 7 in my biology HR mark, which is very unlikely, but do you think that, like, certain dreams can, like, predict your future or, like, can happen if you dream certain things?
I think, they reflect our anxieties. They reflect some unresolved things. Whether they're prophetic, maybe not, but I think they can be super informative and really helpful. I think dreams are
How
a
about
great
yourself,
thing.
I think.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Well, before, to kick it off, would you like to introduce yourself as well for people that don't know you?
Sure. Hi, I'm Ryan Murphy. I'm a Canadian. I'm a UWC graduate, and this is the fourth UWC where I've been a teacher. So, I really believe in education. UWC meant a lot to me, and I'm really glad to be part of the UWC experience of so many people.
That's great. Just geographically, where in Canada, give or take?
Yeah, so if you can imagine the far left is the fun part, British Columbia. We're at the far right, which is a very, very different part, the island of Newfoundland.
Okay. So that's like near Toronto?
Kind of.
I mean, Canada's too big to be near Toronto. But
one way to think of it, so from my home to the UWC in Canada is the same as my home to Kyiv in Ukraine.
Oh my day!
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah.
What?
Canada's huge, and I've driven across it, north to south, east to west, west to east, actually, and so it's a huge distance. We're actually quite a bit closer to Ireland than we are to Toronto, I think.
What?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Canada must be really big then. One thing we always do is we have 9 quick questions.
And it's actually 9 this time.
It's actually 9. We counted
think.
them. Yeah.
Probably.
So I can just kick it off. So what's your, just like quick answers. So what's your biggest strength?
Comfort with uncertainty.
What's your biggest weakness?
I get sleepy a lot.
What's your favorite place you have ever been to?
I would say probably the Poor Knights Islands in New Zealand.
New Zealand's a beautiful place. Favorite food?
I love all Bangladeshi food, but I like biryani.
Okay.
Favorite sport?
Hockey.
Favorite
Ice
movie?
hockey, probably. Right?
Yeah, ice hockey,
Ice
of
hockey,
course.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Favorite movie?
My favorite movie is an Australian cult classic called The Castle.
Okay. Favorite book?
My favorite book, I would say Humankind Solidarity with Non-Human Beings by Timothy Morton.
That's a pretty long title.
What's the genre?
A genre, philosophy.
Oh, philosophy.
Philosophy,
Okay.
Yeah.
What is one thing you think is overrated?
Money.
And the thing that's underrated.
Time.
Okay.
That's
Wow.
very deep. Man.
Yeah, thank you.
That's very philosophical.
Is the book you mentioned like environmental? Is that environmental? Like,
In a way, but yeah, more metaphysical.
philosophy,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so first to start off, we start off where every life starts.
Yeah.
It's your early childhood. So tell us something about that. So we already know where you were born in Canada, but how has that been? How was growing up in Canada?
Yeah, I was super lucky. I tell everyone that I was raised in a community, so everybody knew who I was. My father was a minister, and in a small town, so even before I was born, people knew who I was. And just having that idea that there was care from beyond my family was a really wonderful thing. It was a small place. It was not a wealthy place by any stretch, and there was a really big thing that happened when I was young. The cod fishery, which had been for 500 years what everyone had done, it just got shut down by the government. And so there was really big social change, economic change. And so I experienced that as a young person, and it meant a lot to who I am today.
Do you think that's one of like the most significant, or one of the very significant moments from your childhood that like shape you today? Or are there any other particular moments growing up before UWC perhaps?
That's certainly the biggest one. That affected absolutely everybody, and it was you learn I think pretty early that the universe isn't kind, and like entropy, like things break, and that's toys. It's like but that to see something that was unimaginable break, that really had a huge impact.
Mm-hmm. And so why was this like fishery so important to the town, and why did it break down eventually?
Yeah, so the island was Britain's very first colony, so people don't always think about that. And so the reason people came was for the fishery, for the fish, the cod fish, and that's a fish that changed the world. And so
how did that fish change the world?
It fueled colonialism in a lot of ways. The transatlantic trade was fed by that fish. And in many ways, we were the crossroads of the world for a long period, and then we were kind of forgotten. We were quite peripheral, and sort of thought that the world can do its own thing, and we'll do our own thing. And whether it was climate change or overexploitation or both those things, we just had to stop what we had been doing and find a new way forward.
Okay.
And what was that new way then?
Oil and gas has been the one for a lot of workers. It's a big diaspora. We're not a huge population, but there's not a lot you can do in the world economy to participate there. So you can, a lot of retirees, that kind of thing. But largely a lot of people had to leave.
Oh, wow.
Like diaspora from people going into Newfoundland or like going out?
Out, yeah.
Out, okay, into like other parts of Canada.
Other parts of Canada, other parts of the world, yeah.
Oh. Do you think you're a part of the diaspora?
Technically, yeah. I'd loved it to work at home. It's a beautiful place. But the world is a big place, and I'm really excited. International teaching is one of the best careers. I get to meet international students. So I'm always learning, but I'm also somewhere new every 3 years, and that's awesome.
Is it because for me, like when I moved, it was like awesome and kind of bad at the same time, because you leave a place which you really appreciate, and you come to a new place which is also cool. But is it like, were like places you found it harder to leave than others, or was it always like excitement and when you left, I want to do something new now?
Yeah, I think you get better at adjusting and quicker at sort of saying, okay, well, there's always going to be a cost to these things. So like the book collection is one of the first things that doesn't get packed, that kind of thing. Friendships, one of the things about UWC being an alumnus is that, these connections, it might be 10, 20 years before you see someone again, and you can pick up right where you left off.
Yeah, and you always do it twice in life. Because normally people say, I'll never see a person again in my entire life, but I think you always do it twice in your lifetime.
Yeah, it's. I think there's a lot more positive than negative.
Cool. Oh, wait, so you spoke about fish briefly. I mean, I wanted to ask you, do you eat fish? Are you pescatarian? Are you like...
For a time, I ate ital, and so that was a really healthy period in my life. But yeah, I've always eaten fish, and I'm kind of picky. I like codfish. That's the best. But yeah, any fish, I love fish. But I had a steak last night too.
Fair enough. But it might sound stupid, but like, do you just buy it anywhere, like in the grocery store, or do you look for a specific like Why Michael is laughing, but I think it's a valid. I mean, you're
No,
very
it's true. Yeah.
like environmentally like knowledgeable, so I suppose you maybe have like different methods. I don't know.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, no. So there's when we're buying our food, I think it's really important for consumers to be informed to make good choices. We have a food fishery, which happens a couple weekends every summer, and that's when we'll get our fish. And so I harvest the fish in the summer, and we process it, freeze it, salt it, that kind of thing. There's shark fin. No one should be eating that. But there's also fisheries that are unsustainable, and so it's not just the fish that you're eating, but how it was caught, where it was caught. That matters too.
On that sort of same line, I mean, you're very interested in science. What like is there any specific thing that made you interested in science as a kid, or any like other experience that like made you interested in sustainability, or maybe it was Pearson you got to experience new things?
So I think my real love is nature, and so to get to know nature, biology is one way, ecology is another way. There's just such powerful tools. Like I'm absolutely in love with technology, and so bioinformatics and DNA sequencing, environmental DNA. There's just wonderful things that are happening, and we're getting so much better at studying and knowing. That's really exciting. And so science as a way of knowing, TOK, is fabulous. I really am drawn to that. Definitely Pearson College. I was exposed to scuba diving for the first time, and
that's beautiful.
Oh, absolutely! And the kelp forests and the sea lions and the invertebrates. I got really into sea slugs through a bio IA actually. Like my very first bio homework was on sea slugs, and then I did my extended essay on sea slugs.
I remember you told us that in bio class once you stopped by and we were all working on IIAs, and you mentioned that actually.
I was in my office and I was like, someone said sea slugs. And I just
immediately.
I totally barged in. It's the world is beautiful. The biodiversity is really, really inspiring for me. And there's still a lot to discover. And so being an explorer, someone who wants to see new things and learn new things, bio is great.
And you said that there's so much more things to discover. Could you ever imagine yourself going into the discovering, looking out for new things? Because obviously now you're teaching. So I mean, there also you can also would you ever just consider yourself going into that discovery?
Yeah. Like higher academia, being a researcher or something.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So when I was doing my master's, and it was sort of climate research, and we were using new techniques to study bacteria. And in a liter of seawater, there's 10 million different types of bacteria, and so that was really hard to study 20 years ago. It still is hard to study. The thing that about academia though was it's a job, and there's not a lot of joy there all the time. And so to do it well and to get the funding to do it again next year, it is really high pressure. And I remember walking around the Ocean Science Center in Logie Bay, which is where I did my work. And I peeked my head in every single office, and there was I don't aspire to be any of these people. I love working with them, and I love our shared work, and we have purpose, but I didn't want their lives. And so, that set me on a journey. I went to Ghana, I got into snake ranching, and then I went to be a lighthouse keeper. So I left academia. I do love the idea of discovery. I think peer-reviewed, publishing our research and being part of a scientific community is really important. I think the education, getting amazing people like you a leg up on your own journeys is where I find my best work.
And on the note of education, just going back in time again, how did you find out about the UWC network of schools, and why would you choose to go to Canada? Because usually when a kid is from a country, they wouldn't want to go to UWC in their same country.
Sure. This story actually has a UWC Atlantic connection. So from my island, we would have a single scholarship, and it would only be to Pearson College. And so for at that point, maybe 25 years, only one Newfoundlander would go to Pearson College. That was the UWC story. And so my next door neighbor was absolutely exceptional human being. He still is, David Thomas. And he came here. Yeah, shout out. He came here in, I want to say 97. And so he, just appeared from our little neighborhood, and he was gone, and he came back with a funny accent and telling us about, this crazy Jamaican roommate he had, Carrie Reed, shout out. And just this fabulous experience. He was involved with the boats, the rescues down there. Yeah. And it was just really inspiring for me. And truly, I considered him just so impressive that I didn't even think about applying to UWC. I was like, cool, that was good for him, and that's what people like him deserve. And only when I was sort of in grade 11, the principal of my school said, well, you might have a shot. Why don't you apply? And I was like, okay, well, if you think so. And so I did apply, and the scholarship to Pearson was there. And actually, there were 2 of us that year. And so it was really cool to have a fellow Newfoundlander join with me in Pearson.
So the next question I'd like you to ask, I mean, you've been to many WCs, as you said. Like you've been to 1 as a student and to 4 different as a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So like, how is AC different from other UWCs, or what makes a difference? Like, maybe you can tell us, like, I mean, you've not been here that long. I mean, we've been here longer possibly, but on your short time you've been here, like, what makes a difference?
Yeah, I think they all change. And so the AC today is not the AC it was 5 years ago, and so on. But this is a place where something really special started. And so that sort of tradition.
UWC started here, and the IB as well.
Right. And so that heritage, that's quite a pedigree to come here. Being in Europe, I think is another thing. When you're in Pearson College, you're surrounded by this forest, and you have sea lions out on this island, and you can kayak and canoe. It's more of that outdoor leadership piece. And in India, where you have, like, I've heard it described as that sort of sharp edge of social justice. Service really matters. You can't fake service in India. Like, it's real. And in Japan, it was a brand new school that wanted to be a UWC, so that was a whole different thing as well. So here, I think there is a really good sense of self, and its position in the national context, I think, is really special, and I'm still learning what that really means.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, no, but I mean, you surely, I mean, as you said, you've been like to many very different places that are somewhat related, but then again, they're very different geographically, culturally, and in many other ways. I wanted to go, like, we're kind of gonna go like chronologically through your life, because I mean, they're very different things. So you went to Pearson, you seem to enjoy it. You did scuba diving, and then after Pearson College, you went to uni in Canada.
That's right. Yep. My first degree was biochemistry, and I tried to squeeze in an anthro minor. I really love anthropology. It's a great subject. My first degree was in a really small university where there weren't graduate students, so I got to work with my professors directly. I love that. And after that, I went to my home region again, to the city, and I did my master's in marine biology.
Okay. And were you a party animal? We asked Nahid this. We need to ask this again.
Maybe for a period. Yeah. So
that's a good answer.
Yeah. In a way, so during grad school in particular, I lived like right downtown, and the scene then. We were a small town, so it's not like a German rave or anything like that. But we had a scene, and we had it was a really good crowd and lots of good music. That was the big thing. A lot of DJs in my life, and
So what kind of music do you listen to then?
I listen to all sorts. All sorts. I really, really just love music, and whatever the mood calls for, I'll listen to it. Yeah.
And when you were going to university, were you not tempted to go outside of Canada? Because now you're such a world traveler, so it's kind of, the difference there.
Yeah. I did have sort of my eye open for those possibilities, but I think where, the UWC had been handed to me, and then, as I'm applying to universities, like scholarships are just kind of handed, I kind of took that path of least resistance. Yeah. Honestly, maybe as a piece of advice, don't do that. Be a bit more critical about your life, and I think at one point I should have taken a gap year, and I didn't. I chose, and maybe it was fear, or maybe it was just like it was easier not to take the gap year. I think I definitely probably would have got more and different types of travel in.
So, are you then a fan of a gap? Because I mean, that's like a topic that's obviously getting discussed now. I mean, we're all graduating. Some are going straight up to university. I think Michael and Theo probably are. I'm still debating, but like, so are you like, gap year, yes, do it, And if yes, what would you do in your gap year? I mean, this is probably a question that many of our listeners would like to make an answer
I think
to.
whoever you are, if you think you know what you want to do, pursue it, right? Don't waste your time. But I know people who've gotten to the end of a 4-year degree, and just before the exams, they walked away. And it was like, oh, crap, like that. Who wasted their year? 1 year on a gap year or 4 years in a program that they didn't finish? I think if you have a sense of purpose, go for it. And if you don't, use your gap year to look for that purpose.
Yeah, and what do you think that looks like? Because I think
that's what I was asking.
really good advice, right? Like I've spoken to you, and you're like a good mentor. So
Well,
what if to someone that perhaps does not really know their specific purpose or they're looking for it? What's your input on that?
Don't live by yourself on a lighthouse. You might enjoy yourself, but I don't know what you'll find. I think relationally is where we sort of like start to construct meaning, and so whether it's volunteering somewhere for a while or traveling with some friends in a new place. When we went to Ghana, there were physical therapists and med students that came with me. And so I was there for snakes. But the fact that I had something happening and these other people who had other interests, like we sort of collaborated. And we had a positive impact on a community just for trying something different.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you brought it up. Spending 2 years alone in a lighthouse island. Race Rocks Ecological Reserve. Do you want to tell us about that?
Sure. So this is.
Did you do that straight out of uni, or how that would go?
So when I walked around the university and said I don't want to be these people, I walked away, and they're like, "You're crazy! Like, what are you doing?"
So
and
then you walked to the Lighthouse.
So first I went to Ghana, and so my
So you didn't finish your master's?
Not then.
Okay.
So I walked away from my master's. I had a co-year in Ghana. I said, "Look, I think there's this cool thing I want to do. You have these snakes in your country that like there's sustainable business I have in mind. Let's try this." and so I went and did the snakes. I was a wildlife, not a trafficker. I did it legally through CITES, which is a nice ESS I call it. But I did that legally. And then as I came home, it was like, well, I didn't find my love of life in West Africa. That's not a place for me. The snakes are cool, but I didn't want to live there. I didn't want to work there. And a friend of mine, when I came back, she was like, "Oh, you saw that there's a job at the Lighthouse at Pearson." I said, "No, I didn't see that." And she's like, "Yeah, you should apply." And I did. And it was like the old EVS teacher, the old ESS. He was interviewing me. My scuba instructor, he interviewed me. So it was
kind of a home run.
It was a home run, yeah. And I went from grad school to Africa to the Lighthouse. Yeah.
And what was your job at the Lighthouse?
The job was Eco Guardian. Eco Guardian, so it was a pilot marine protected area. The government wanted someone there to make sure that conservation targets were being met, but it was paid for by UWC Pearson College, and they basically took over from the lighthouse keepers. Their positions were automated. The technology lighthouses don't need people, but the educational research, outreach, the conservation pieces, all of that required a manned presence, and so I got to do that.
So it wasn't an isolated job, because that's the first thing that came to my mind when someone told me you worked at the Lighthouse, that you were in the middle of nowhere alone for 3 years.
He was.
Yeah, if you look out on a map, it is the middle of nowhere.
Oh, okay.
And for 6 weeks at a time, particularly in from November to February, I wouldn't see anybody.
Ooh,
So that was cool. I like that. But the really great time was when, say, a project week, kids would come out and we would do work on the roof, but we'd also go scuba diving.
That sounds like a really nice project.
Great project weeks. And, the wetsuits are cold and you're in Canada and you're just trying to dive as much as you can. But
and diving is a beautiful sport. I mean, I've been lucky to experience it myself, and it really opens the eye to because people, obviously the ocean is so big and it's massive and people don't really see it. But when you go diving, you see a lot of things.
Yeah, so when Pearson was established, the scuba diving service started, and the students went out there, and they're like, "This is really special. It's not just cool that we're diving, but this place is special." And so, back in the 80s, they just wrote to the government and say, "Hey, could you guys protect this?" And when they came back in September, they're like, "Yeah, we did. It was an ecological reserve just like that."
What year was that?
I think it was 82. I might be wrong on that, but around there.
When did you spend those years in the island?
So I worked there 2008 to 2011.
And how old were you? 30?
2008, I was 25, turning 26, yeah.
did you have any connection? Like, did you like, I don't know, because I imagine like if you're on an island, like you're so like far away from everything. Like, do you watch the news? Because I personally, I don't know if I would watch the news.
Right.
I'd be like, fuck it. Like, let me just be. You know?
I did feel so. There was
If I have my beer there, I'm happy.
I'll tell my own story, but I want to tell another story. So there was after the earthquake and the Fukushima disaster, about maybe 6 weeks after that, a sailboat was coming through the passage, and
That was 2011, right?
Was it 2011?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
right.
2011.
Yeah, and so yeah, it was in the spring, March or something, and so this was probably April, and you know, I had very little else to do but watch and look at the world, which was joyful. I didn't watch a screen that much, and this boat just had jerry cans all around it, so they had a lot of fresh water. So this was a long distance sailing ship, and they pulled into Pedder Bay. They went into the college, and it was a Japanese family, and they hadn't heard that the disaster had happened. So part of that, the joy of not knowing what's happening in the world, like the ignorance is bliss, there is that aspect of being isolated like that. But also just being really hyper connected to the place. And so, you know, for a long time, I was just constantly watching the wind and like very cognizant of the tides and the moons and things, because that was what mattered for me. Everything else, like the morning news, none of that mattered. My life was very consistent.
Did you have any like revelation at that point in time? Because I assume if you spend that much time
Alone.
yeah,
do you,
I mean,
do you get crazy at some point?
a little bit. At the same time, I guess like people that are like in prison, for example, they do spend like time in that form of isolation, but in a different way. You were like connected with nature in such a deep level, and like with animals.
Beautiful
And
place.
you were also doing a lot of photography.
Yeah.
Very cool photography.
Thank you.
We'll put the link to that.
I appreciate that.
On the podcast.
on the podcast. But yeah, I mean, did you have any form of like? Did that change you as a person?
I think one of the things we can, you know, after grad school and kind of being unhappy and realizing I needed to change my life was that, you know, you can kind of blame your situation always. Like you can always point to, it's like, well, I can't do this because, and then you get out and your time is 100% your own and you can't blame anything else. Like you realize that there are certain things about yourself that aren't contextual, they're intrinsic. And so if you want to change them, you have to be really conscious and honest about that. So that was probably my greatest revelation. I think some of the other things were that, you know, that was my dream job and that was kind of my first job. And so it's like, okay, well, what do I do from here? And so it was being a little bit less selfish 25-year-old and more of a serious 28-year-old about approaching the world in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Did you read a lot of books? Because I could imagine I would do that.
I thought I would read more. I think that's part of it.
How much did you read, if you know?
You know, less than I did in grade 6. Honestly, yeah. I the camera was always in my hands. I did have internet, so there was a website, racerocks.com, and I was connected to the world. There was a very small group of people that I was kind of in not maybe daily contact, but consistent contact with. So it wasn't. It was physically very isolated, but I think just sort of socially, it wasn't that isolating for me. Yeah.
And so, like in terms of entertainment, you had to work. You had to deal with like all the energy and like the generators.
Everything.
Right?
Yeah.
How long did that take? Like, what was like a normal day alone in an
Yeah.
island?
Okay. Yeah. This is fun. So a normal day, you know, get up at 5 or just before sunrise and report the sort of sea conditions to the local marina. Just kind of a social, like they helped us, we helped them, and there were a lot of fishers during some of the seasons, and they wanted to know if they could go out or where they could go, and so report the weather. Every day for like 150 years, the high tide had been sampled for salinity and temperature. So it was a really good climate data set that people had been doing for over 100 years. And so that wherever the high tide was, that was something I had to do. If it was, you know, a nice day, I wouldn't have to start the engines, so that was really beautiful. We had a lot of renewable energy investment, and but if it was a day where I needed to generate fresh water, I had to get the engine started, had to get the desalination running, had to sort of check the electrical load on things, sometimes put out fires, just kind of keep track on that. Lots of maintenance. You know, the ocean is not kind to human infrastructure, so a lot of just repairs and just keeping on top of things like that. But one of my favorite times of day would be, you know, just about half an hour before sunset. And it was like, well, no one's coming. so I can sort of stop watching the front of the island, and I can go and get on the west side of the island, get tucked in on the rocks and get out of the wind no matter what was happening, and just like in silence watch the sun come down and watch like all the animals and birds kind of settle for the night, and just realize that I was part of that I was settling for the night too. Yeah, that was the best part of the day for me.
Oh, okay.
And then a follow-up question, since we're at the Lighthouse, and that's somewhat connected to your in Pearson. How was your time as a UWC student in Pearson? What type of student were you? Like, what's your best memory of the place, and what made you interested in going? There's a lot of questions, but let's start off with the first one. How was your time as a UWC student in Pearson?
It was great, but I've got to be honest, to my memories, it was always a roller coaster, like emotionally, like the really great highs, but then, socially, sometimes you feel a bit isolated, or you wish like an exam had gone a different way, or you got on a certain project versus something else. So yeah, very, very high highs.
But is that the IB or is that the school?
That was the school. We weren't so worried about the IB so much as just in relation to each other. And
do you think that changed, that students now, because I feel like, I don't know, like I feel like over the years grades have become way more important than they used to were, and it's in our lives a lot of things are about grades now, not about people anymore. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, absolutely. Education has changed. It's not just UWC, but I feel that we led education around the world, and now we're being led by like best practices that someone decided in a very different context without our values. So,
because UWC is still a very, when people when I went, I was in a different school before when I went to UWC, and when I went to UWC, many people didn't understand why I would go to such a place, and because it is such a different way of teaching, and it is such a different. But do you think that because you said that UWC is being led, and like a while ago UWC led the movement, kind of? The IB essentially, so it was leading at some point. Yeah. Why do you think that changed?
I'll move a little bit away from us and more into like systems thinking. And so in systems, we can think about the state of the system as being driven, but it can also be attracted. And I think just the conditions of the world, the priorities of our economies, the fears of our parents, all these sorts of things are both pushing us and pulling us to a certain state. And it's just easier, as imagine you're an inspector or you're a manager of this, the word quality control comes in. It's like, what does quality control have to do with mutual respect? Well, how do we measure that quality?
How do you quantify that?
Why do we think about measuring quality? That I find all of those things. I understand why it's happening, but I find it difficult to work in that context. Yeah.
And you mentioned systems. So talking about systems, STP.
Yeah.
You're a teacher in STP, and we didn't get to experience it. Do you want to tell us about that? What's your thought on it? How do you see it developing in the future?
Yeah, I'm so happy. STP is the reason I am here. Systems Transformation for Just Futures is a fabulous program. I work with a wonderful team of people who have expertise that I just would never access, but I am accessing. I'm working in this team. We have 24 great students who work so hard. One of my fears is we work them too hard, but they really care about the work, and they're really open. They're risk takers. They're great communicators, great collaborators. It's everything you would hope to see in a classroom, but even more so. I think a lot of teachers are the performer. They're sort of the captain of the ship kind of thing, and they like that sort of control. With this collaboration and still building the program as we're doing it, it's really it's invigorating. It's a little scary at times, but what we're getting back out of it is paying dividends. There's hype around it, and for good reason. It's an awesome program, and I think it can really change a lot of educational systems.
So you feel maybe in the future that program will take over in the future there be a different shift, that other IB schools maybe also will offer this project? What do you think about that?
I really hope so. It'll take time, and it'll seem like way too much time before it really scales to other schools. And in the end, maybe it won't be exactly what we've imagined right now. But I think one of the limitations is that you're not going to have the faculty who are as open,
of course,
and as experienced. We're here for a reason. This is a certain type of school, and we work with a certain type of students, and not everyone's so lucky to do that.
That's true. I mean, also, like, I guess the experiences you have and those kind of like learning experience, they shape you as a teacher and as a person, which make you then more qualified.
Yeah.
Theo, I mentioned earlier you were a great mentor. So what's your advice, maybe also like one personal question a little bit, in this world where everything is getting like more, where the focus is shifting on more academics and those kind of things? What's your advice? Like, what would you do if you would do the IB now?
Yeah, I was really fortunate to have one of my students who I taught at Mahindra visit me in Japan this spring, and he reminded me of some advice I gave him, so I'll say it again because he thought it was worthwhile. Whatever you do, don't do it to finish it. Do it to get you somewhere else, get a new skill or open up a new door. That, you know, it's absolutely fine to barely pass your IBs because that's fine. You got an IB, you can do something with that. But if you're taking bio because you think that's interesting, like pursue that, like with a passion, like love what you're doing, and don't rush things. It's okay to make mistakes. You are you. No one else can be you. And on your journey, you get to make choices, and they add up. And that's a really powerful thing. It can be scary when bad decisions kind of add up, but you're always able to become something else. And being purposeful in your choices, that's a really good thing to do.
I think that's a good thing you said, because in the beginning, like I like my like passion was always sports. Mm-hmm. And then I came here and I had to do the biology HL because I couldn't do math HL because my math was not good enough, simply. And that's the hard truth. But then I had to do it in order to then get like this German diploma so I can study in Germany. But now I've realized it's actually like a really good skill, like to understand your body. I feel like it's a really good advice you gave just there, because I feel like sometimes I do that biology more in order to get a certain grade. But if I would do it more to like understand and do it for myself, to get something out of curiosity, mm-hmm. then I think my grade would improve too. Yeah. So that's a good piece of advice.
Yeah, I mean, and like on that note, you've experienced, we briefly touched upon it, but like you've experienced teaching and learning in different UWC schools. What surprised you maybe? I know you've spoken a lot about Japan and like how you're kind of a fan in some ways of its culture, and mm-hmm. like you saw things that perhaps were missing, like Western mm-hmm. world. Just in teaching and in life in general, is there anything in particular that you thought was very valuable?
Yeah. So I learned it at Mahindra, and I tried to bring it to UWC Japan. I think it did in many ways that diversity is a strength. And so having world religions taught as a weekly seminar where you have tea and you pray, that's cool. Mm-hmm. Having philosophy where you drink your coffee in the morning at the cafeteria and you have a discussion, that's really cool. Having a chemistry lab where you're picking up these skills to teach or try to learn everything the one way you're not really getting the richness of what it is to learn. And in Japan, particularly in the public system, there's this concept that there's the best way to be the best, and that's singular. And truthfully, I think that's a harmful concept. That there's a lot of great ways forward, and in a world today that's increasingly complex, there is no best way. That you want to do. You want to do good, and that should be the goal. Don't try to polish a 6 into a 7 just to make it a 7. Learn because you want to.
And do you think STP kind of makes use of that, like that dynamic, that idea?
Absolutely. So with all students will do an individual intervention, and so that's for them to decide, for them to design, for them to evaluate.
It's so cool. They do their own thing basically, and
absolutely,
it's such a good opportunity.
And they're being supported by an amazing anthropologist who can really talk about power and migration. And we've got Emma who's talking about energy and geography in a great way. For me, biodiversity and ecology in another way. Maria, who's into regenerative leadership. So having so many different types of teachers influence you around the same ideas and like shared kind of work, that's absolutely.
Yeah, but I hear that the most like often complaint about STP is that it can be too vague or ambiguous at times, and that students get asked these big questions that sometimes they don't really know what it means because it's all too theoretical, and sometimes it's just stuff that you never thought before, and sometimes you don't think that you should ever think about it, but it's good at the end of the day. But
Yeah, no, and I think criticisms are super important, and I also think discomfort is really important. We had a wonderful tradition at Pearson College called Jack Matthews Day, and one of the last times I saw it, the students were meant to try something that day that they expected to fail. And
That's something really interesting.
yeah.
What did you do?
I was supervising.
Okay.
But yeah, I had students who wanted to swim from the lighthouse back to the campus, and
Well, like, you're not gonna make it. What happens then?
well, yeah. So that's why I was in the boat. But yeah, no, they showed up like an hour and a half late. And I was like, well, you've already failed. I was like, well, we're gonna try anyway. I was like, well, that's good spirit. And so they beat themselves out, like swimming so hard against the current, like puking, like it just like they really tried. And I was like, okay, guys, get out of the water. Like I'll take you back. But back to this idea of we are dealing with ideas, and we're dealing with a world where we're entering unfamiliar territory, and like I said, it's really fun to teach chemistry because what we know about chemistry has changed, but how do we teach chemistry and what are the basics? That's stayed the same for 100 years. When we're talking about addressing the fact that we're moving into the Anthropocene, that there's a polycrisis of climate change and food insecurity, and we're moving away from democratic values all across the world. We are going to be uncomfortable, and there aren't going to be clear answers. And so that it's not by design that we're trying to make students uncomfortable, but what I love about not having exams is that we can keep coming back to an idea, and after a little bit more experience, we come back to it, and it starts to take on more meaning for the students. So yeah, right away, I feel lost, even for the faculty. Like, we look at each other, it's like, I didn't know that. Like, it's we're teaching ourselves things, so it is unfamiliar.
Do you think the school or the IB will be able to scale this up further, maybe in the next year? Or
Yeah, so it's a really exciting time right now where we're recruiting new teachers, and some new pioneers to help us build this program. I've heard that the goal for us is to, for our third year, really bring this to our existing faculty, that we don't want to hire externally, that we want to do that second stage of this project where we would develop people who aren't necessarily comfortable with the idea or necessarily ready. So how do we prepare other teachers? And for me, that's pretty exciting. The scaling of the work is going to be as much in changing the systems of the teaching as it is who is doing the learning.
And how did you find out about then STP? Like, how did you get here then, essentially? Was it like an application process?
There's an application process. Applying to UWC Atlantic is not too painful. Truthfully, though, Maria and my wife and I all worked together at Mahindra College back in 2014.
So there's a connection.
Yeah, we knew that this program was coming together, and so that was how we got the idea, and applied and was really excited. I remember the students. I presented this idea of hyperobjects in my interview, and I was like, "Well, why did I do that? That's it's a really abstract concept."
can you explain what it is?
In simple terms.
In simple terms, if there are concrete objects that we can hold in our hands, and then there's something like global warming, which we can't even point to. And so when something is massively distributed through space and through time, like global warming, it's been going on for hundreds of years. It goes on in so many different ways. We could think of that as a hyperobject.
So something basically that we can't touch and control.
Yeah. So it's.
I love the idea of an abstract concept. Yes.
And it's just a way. I think it's actually a great success that we even know about global warming. That it would be very easy for us to have all this technology and all our hopes and desires and all our emotions and all our reason, and not be organized or not be I don't know, inspired to know this hyperobject.
And to make a change, essentially, right?
Absolutely, to sense it in a way that we know how to make a change.
How would, because obviously there's always like big discussions going on how to really tackle climate change. And I mean, I feel like, like we all obviously know a lot about it, but you're someone who understands like understands the environment, understands how things work. Like what do you think is like the key to maybe like solving? Not like it's hard. I'm not going to ask you like
That's a hyper question.
that's a hyper question. But you gotta have it. So like what do you think everyone simple terms? What do you think like a solution could be?
Are we all gonna die?
No, we're not all going to die. Yeah. Our species will survive. Our favorite species will also survive.
The dogs or
Yeah, obviously dogs.
Cows.
It's true. I saw you on the football field multiple times with your dog.
Yeah. No,
While I was doing football
he
training.
keeps me honest, keeps me fit. So yeah, this idea of change is, we discount the social change, and in my lifetime we've moved from not being willing to talk about adapting to climate change, because that's admitting defeat, to is like, well, we really have to be serious about talking about adaptation. And we will respond to these challenges socially. We'll respond to them technologically. We'll fail. We'll continue to fail in our responses. They'll never be good enough. Absolutely not. There will be really, really profound shifts in people, in economies, in food production. Everything will change.
Climate,
the extreme weather. That's another one that it's the once in a century flood is going to happen every 10 years. And what does that look like? How do we build for that? But these are all sort of simple things. I think the bigger one is when we have the need to respond to like just such a massive scale of human need that we've never seen before. And we're not responding particularly well in 2024 to human suffering. So yeah, I think that's a real challenge of how do we not be desensitized. And when we're talking about the environment, we've failed. We just say 1.5 degrees. We say blah, 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 blah. We give all these numbers, all these facts, and it doesn't help us do better. And so we have to change the way we even talk about the problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like, of course, it's a biological thing. In a way, it's like an environmental thing, clearly. But the way you talk about it's more of you look at it from a social viewpoint of how like human nature by itself, perhaps it's flawed, and therefore it has like affected the broader surroundings. So what do you think will be some like very tangible changes that will shock us, but that will have to or are supposed to occur in the next, I don't know, decade, years?
Yeah. I'd like to think that we're still able to be shocked. Even COVID, we got desensitized to it so quickly.
Just a normal thing happening.
We habituate. Yeah, and so being international and like changing the context we live in and the languages we speak and our friend groups, we habituate to change so quickly, and so that's as much a blessing as a curse. We'll just get used to the new normal. We'll forget that there's a thing called salmon. We'll forget about steaks and eating like we do today, because we'll forget that. We'll habituate. I think shocks to the system will be things like essentially free energy. The price of renewables in my lifetime, if you look at a graph, it's absolutely unbelievable how cheap renewables are compared to what they were, and that's without fusion. If we get fusion, then that's absolute game changer. We have wonderful material science. Our battery technologies are also sort of keeping up with the need. I think in a way, to answer your question, there might never be a shock. That
you always adapt to the newest shock the best way possible.
We'll keep talking about the problem, and we'll keep talking about the challenges, and we'll keep educating young people who can
how to do it better. And now we have this wonderful generative AI tool that's also going to absolutely change what it means to do work.
And so I think maybe universal basic income won't even be a surprise to your kids. So like at some point it'll come in, and then we'll just accept it.
Well, you had a lot of positivity on life. Where does this come from? Is it just like that we can get through this, or?
Yeah, so two things. So seeing like a literal apocalypse as a child, that like our way of life was destroyed. And coming out of that, and that there's still pride in place, there's still art, there's still friendship, there's still sustainable communities, there's still communities that treat each other well. All of that is a wellspring of hope for me. And similarly, we have a big planet where there really isn't much scarcity. Truly, there isn't. There's a lot of injustice in how we distribute our resources, but there isn't real scarcity. And so as we deal with something like COVID, it was a disaster here, and then it got better, but then it was a disaster over here, and so these rolling crises they're planetary in nature, but they don't happen everywhere at once, and so it's part of having a good passport and an international community is, I feel quite a bit of flexibility of being able to, ride the wave to the best places at the best times, but at the same time that we weather the storm and we just keep moving forward. That's our birthright.
How do you think you get there though on an individual level? Like, do you think going to an island is the answer? Do you meditate? Do you, I don't know,
travel the world?
Yeah. Do you drink tea? Like, essentially, it sounds like you're talking about human nature on a like individual basis.
Individual practice is super important. So meditation, do it. If you can do it every day, that's probably a good thing. If you can, keep your health and your core strength going and your flexibility, that's really good for you. If you're 80 years old, listen to this on YouTube. It's like, just like flex your wrists and your ankles. like there's things we can all do to make our lives just a little bit better and maintain our strength and our cognition. And there's lots of things we just can't control. And so whether you have a religious explanation for that, or whether you're good at statistics and you're just like you can relax. There's a real privilege in being, having a good life, but I don't think there's any privilege in being happy. I think that's really ultimately a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said this earlier, I think what just also maybe concludes to that, you said like that, like we asked you what is overrated, and you said money, and like you said what is underrated is time. And I think one of those things you learn as well, probably you did as well, like at the Lighthouse, time like is so valuable, and you can't get it back. It's like I don't know, there's no way, at least I don't know yet. But so would you say like that's one of like the key learnings that you took in those like at the Lighthouse that made you like make time the most underrated thing for you in that answer to that question?
Yeah. Like I said, it was that learning that I can waste my time no matter what. We can all waste our time no matter what, and there are distractions where you can get water out of a tap that was easy, that you just pay a bill for, or you can get your food at the store because you didn't plan your meals. All of these conveniences in life can come, but at what cost? And so to be really, you don't have to be jealous with your time. You don't have to be a loner on a mountain or on an island kind of thing, but to understand that the people we surround ourselves with, the things we choose to occupy our time with, that's all life is. Yeah, no, I'd like to ask you guys some questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's
sure,
okay.
yeah,
we never
fair
had that
enough.
before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, fair enough. It turns around a little bit.
Yeah. All right. We've got two Europeans in the room, and I shot Carlo here that I've never been to continental Europe. Like, I landed in Frankfurt once. That's it.
Okay.
And so I'd like to sort of know your thoughts, your hopes, maybe your concerns for Europe. What does that look like to you, to your communities, to your future?
As for Europe, as in the EU, or as as a community, as the
There's
Europeans?
so much diversity. So what your Europe?
Well, I feel like on a bigger scale, like Europe's becoming this kind of a continent that is losing its because we've been first for everything, right? Back in history, we colonized the whole world. Not my country personally, okay, I'm not going to talk about Carlo's country, but we've been first to everything, right? And now it feels like there is this inversion with first it was America, and now it's Southeast Asia, and we've lost kind of this edge. And I feel like it's going into the future, I feel like we kind of lost this ambition to be, the best at everything, and we're just the ones that adapt and regulate everything. And I feel like going into the future, that's something I would like to be as like a change maker. Let's say that's a buzzword at AC. That to foster this and renew this culture of innovation and, being at the forefront of something, because I think that's what Europe lost kind of, and the community overall.
I think obviously for me, I think Michael has a totally valid point that we've lost our drive. I think that especially like if I view it from like a German perspective, I think like that especially German economy lost the drive over the last couple of years. For example, to be first in the car industry, that drive was lost. Then I think for Europe in total, I think what's going to be a big issue is energy security, especially when I talk about Germany. I know for a fact that not into politics, but my government decided to stop all nuclear power, which for me is a big mistake personally, because that's I think the only way how we can overcome this like time scale from from natural resources to make energy to like renewable resources, and that time we need to overcome with nuclear power. I read a book which was called Blackout by Mark Ellsberg. I recommend everyone to read it.
Okay.
If you don't, because I would not recommend, if you're German, don't read it because you get really scared, because the book describes what happens if a country has no more energy. And that's quite frightening. Obviously we live in also Europe. I think we live in a Europe where like energy security will be our next biggest issue, because obviously there are other things going on in the world which impact that directly, and I think being dependent on another country is never really good, because your relation can be as good as possible, but then the own country will always put its own needs first, and not like if France. I don't know if France needs the energy and like it just needs it, they won't give it to Germany, and then I'll sit in a blackout room. But yeah, I think I really want to be part of a change, because I think that I think it's always like hard when you see how like your parents explain it and how maybe it was, and then to see how it now is. I mean, it's not dramatically bad, but I think there's always something you can do. So I would like to, like as Michael said, maybe be a change maker in some way, shape, or form.
Cool. Yeah.
But Europe is a cool place. I'll definitely go. Like it's a cool place. Let's not downgrade it.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful. Like for sceneries, you have history there. Obviously,
it's very different from west to the east.
Not as good as Argentina. Of
great
course.
Great cars. As a German, I must say that now. And beer.
Yeah. I'll see you in October.
Yeah, exactly. See you in October. Hit me up. I'll be there.
Great. And Theo, maybe a slightly different question. So, Argentina's gone through great political upheaval as of late, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but South America as a whole, for me, in Eastern Canada, people would make the joke we have a half-hour time zone, so we're like slow in the head kind of thing. And really, yeah, I was like 4 years old when someone said that to me. It was like, with South America in a way like sort of never been first, right? And so what do you think about the future for that continent, for Argentina?
Dude, I mean, I think there's always been great potential. It's a bit tricky to think about. I feel like potential in like a like extractionary way, like we can like make the most out of what we have and like keep on moving in like this direction, which is not working fully. Like things are going well, and like quality of life has significantly improved in the last like 100 years, of course, mainly due to like technology and capitalism. But I think ultimately the best way to think about things and like potential is not of that of like being the best, but rather like improving people's lives, because that's what I don't know. I'm like a bit hedonistic in that way, I feel like ultimately that's like what matters the most. So we're gonna die at some point. So
wow.
Going back to South America, dude, it's tricky. I mean, I was there for Christmas, and we have a new president in Argentina. He's a weird guy for sure.
He's different.
Good way to put it.
It's quite a phenomenon. I mean, politically and socially, and I think there's a lot of structural things that need to be rearranged, and historically they've been flawed, and that something needs to change clearly. But I also feel like it's partly cultural, and that's how that's the way I see it, the way I try to like explain it to others and to myself as well. I think ultimately, the countries and communities, they're like a projection of like an individual will, whether that be like decision making, or likes, dislikes, these like language and other practices. So I feel as though when we talk about like change itself should come as well from like individual basis. And I think Argentina, this is like quite a common phrase, but like it is the way it is right now because it has Argentinians on it. You know, and I know that sounds like a bit like cheesy or maybe like unrealistic or vague, but I think that's true. Ultimately, the things are the way they are because of the way people act, and you kind of see that in every country, I think. So I think, yeah, I really hope for the best, but I think the change needs to be human. It needs to be like social. People need to change the way they think about themselves and others, and that's when we'll see like real actual change in the future, which will happen sooner or later.
It is happening.
But
Yeah, thanks for the great questions, Ryan.
Yeah,
I
thank
think
you.
we'll need to cut it here. But first, the last question of the podcast, as we always ask, what is your definition of success in life?
My definition of success in life. I should have prepared this. I think it's giving love and being loved.
Wow. That's
Love and being
simple and
Simple,
yeah.
sweet, good. So, thank you for listening,
yeah,
and thank you for being here, Ryan. It was a very nice episode.
Yeah,
I
incredible
really appreciate
conversation.
it. Thank you
Yeah.
guys.
amazing. Thanks everyone for
Listening.
and stay tuned for more.
Yeah, peace out.